Okay, welcome everyone, both those who are watching this on video and those who are here live. This is Raj Iyer welcoming you to the third session of the Zoom avatar of the Lunchbox Philosophers. This is also the second part of our discussion of philosophy and the coronavirus, the larger umbrella being the philosophy of pandemics. We covered quite a bit of ground last week, and I'm anxious to share some of that with you. But first, I think Ujjwal, are we still waiting for people?
I think
Why don't we go around and let's do something that we did in live Lunchbox meetings. Let's go around and introduce ourselves.
Sure.
Anita, for example, doesn't know many of you.
So yeah, so let me call people, okay, if that's okay. Let's start with Miss Anita. Yeah, sure, because we don't. Some of us don't know. Hi, Miss Anita. Could you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Anita, and I live in Idiki, in Kerala. I'm still a friend of Raj as an FB friend. We haven't met, but I read all his posts, and it is very enlightening. And at this stage of my life, I quite enjoy sitting and listening to people more than talking. But I've had a pretty interesting life in the sense I worked with development and with vulnerable children, women's rights for many, many years. Now I'm sitting in Idiki doing meditation and yoga. Wow. So I just enjoy listening to young people, and I love listening to philosophy and things which Raj so brilliantly puts forth in his posts. So awesome. That's me, and thank you for letting me join your Lunchbox group, right? I'm in the dark now. I'm in total dark.
It's everything works here. We are an eclectic bunch. That was awesome. You're the most welcome, ma'am. So let me ask. Yes, let me ask Professor Dheeraj Sanghi. Sir, could you please introduce yourself for everyone else?
Okay, so I've been a professor of computer science at IIT Kanpur since '93, and I spent 2 years in IIIT Delhi from 2015 to 17. That is when I got hooked on to this Lunchbox Philosopher of Raj Iyer and the rest of you. Really enjoyed it. I've hardly read philosophy, so I hardly participate in this, but I just love listening to it. Thank you.
Well, most welcome. You're most welcome. Let's do Ram. Ram.
Hi, I'm Ramachandran, and I'm studying in IIIT Delhi. I'm a fourth year student right now.
Great. That was concise. That was brevity. All right. Let's go to Tarun Suresh. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi. I just joined a IIIT program, MTech in Computer Science last week. So I came to know by the Philosophy Society. I was impressed because I myself have a lot of philosophical thoughts in me. So I thought I'll just start it with this. So this is my first session.
Right. So IIIT Delhi or Hyderabad?
Delhi.
Oh, okay, great. Okay.
Welcome, Tarun.
Yeah. Welcome. Why don't we go to Sudhanshu? Sudhanshu, can you introduce yourself to everyone?
Yeah. Hi. So I'm currently in my fourth year of IIIT Delhi. So I've taken a lot of Raj Iyer courses, and I personally feel he has done the most to the college in the sense of intellectual and the philosophical community. So I think that's super great, and I'm sure. I mean, I'm skeptical if we can ever get a professor like Raj Iyer ever in the philosophical sense.
I miss him.
Thanks for the affirmation, Sudhanshu, and you too, Anita.
Yep. We miss you.
We haven't heard from Deepak. Are you planning to introduce yourself, Deepak?
Yeah. So why don't Deepak introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi everyone. I'm Deepak. You could call me a writer, musician, an actor, and a teacher. But I've come out of mainstream education to try a few things on my own, and philosophy, psychology, and post-colonial studies are three of my favorite subjects. So glad to be part of this discussion. And I'm also involved with Professor Raj in some of his editing work and some articles that we've been collaborating together with. So thanks. I I really look forward to all these sessions.
Yes, Professor Vish, could you introduce yourself to all of us?
Sure. I'm Vishweshwar. I'm a visiting faculty at IIIT Delhi. I retired from IIT Delhi in 2015. My luck or otherwise, my neighbor at IIIT Delhi was Raj Iyer, which meant I had no choice but to be part of this group, and I've enjoyed it immensely. Thank you.
That's amazing.
Vish, would you mind turning on your video? You've unmuted yourself,
Sure.
but you haven't turned on your video.
Oh,
That's the
I
last
forgot.
step. Yeah.
My mistake.
Yeah. Now I
Thank
see
you.
you and see you whole. Yeah. Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we have a few-
Yeah, so I'll just go. Ms. Gargi, could you please introduce yourself to all of us? Dr. Gargi.
I'm Gargi Jain, and I taught philosophy in Jesus Mary College. And I got to know Raj through Vijay Tanka, and I had invited him for a seminar in college, and I was very impressed with the way he had done the discussion. And so we became Facebook friends then. And as soon as I saw this, I wanted to join this because I wanted to go for those lunch boxes, but the distance from my place was so much that it was very difficult to travel all that distance. I attempted once, but after that I didn't have that energy. So now I got this opportunity, and I hope to learn a lot from the young ones.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for putting your trust in this forum, and we hope that we can bring something of interest to you. Hi, Vanalata. Before you speak, I'll just say she's a friend from IIIT Hyderabad. I met her there when I was doing a semester there. So Vanalata, why don't you introduce yourself to everyone?
Hello.
Hi. Yeah, we can hear you.
My name is Vanalata, and I'm a research student at IIIT Hyderabad. I work in the cognitive science department, and I enjoy reading philosophy in my free time.
Great.
Thank you so much for joining.
Let us into a closely guarded secret. Why do you call yourself Bulusu?
Yeah.
Oh.
Thereon hangs a tale.
I have a twin sister, and I was standing in for her once, so I just forgot to change my name. Yeah.
Wow, that's so fascinating. I didn't know that. That's interesting. Great. Good for you. Yeah, I mean,
I remember not to call you Bulusu. I was yelling Bulusu for the first 5 minutes of this program.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. My internet connection suddenly just went off for some reason.
Well, welcome. Are there any other folks that we forgot to introduce? I think we have them all pretty much. Let's see. And if anyone's lurking in the shadows, please feel free to raise your hand or just butt in and say, "Hi, I'm so-and-so." That's the way we do it at Lunchbox Philosophers gatherings. And there's no reason why the online avatar should be any different than the cafe avatar at IIIT. Ujjwal, shall we start with the overview? I think, Ujjwal, I think you've muted yourself.
Yes, he needs to.
Why don't you introduce yourself, sir?
Okay, my name is Raj Iyer, and I'm guilty as charged. I am the founder, faculty member of the Lunchbox Philosophers many years ago, and it was an experiment that took off. We started off, as I said a little earlier, with 2 or 3 students joining in and a few bored-looking faculty members, and we'd have administrators going by and scoffing. And then we built up and built up and built up, and we had a huge number of students and very empathic administrators like Dr. Sanghi. And, and I was very surprised because I started off with this humanities professor stereotype about IIIT being a tech institute, an IT institute. Other students are not going to be interested. the humanities, philosophy, that's just a general studies requirement. Why would they show up every week to discuss a philosophical issue? I was very surprised. I mean, the Lunchbox Philosophers attracted far more students than St. Stephen's College did with its Philosophical Society, where a lot of philosophy majors were just blasé. You know, who's going to get up for that? Whereas I found that there was a lot of interest, probably because this was new, exotic, and exciting from the standpoint of an IT major. So that's good. Yes. Deepak, do we have someone else here?
No, so that's about it. So I think we've had all introductions. Now I'll just say a brief thing. I'm Ujjwal. Yeah, I'm Ujjwal, and I'm a fourth-year student. I study computer science, sociology, and psychology. And I'm very interested in philosophy as a matter on the side, kind of. It's my hobby. Or maybe I just want to learn it through argument more than sort of a lecture setting. I don't enjoy that as much. Or maybe if there was a professor who did the Socratic method, I would perhaps take their course. So with that, let me just say, during the course of the discussion, so I'm the moderator. So today I will be very careful. So yes, please raise your hands. So there's an option in Zoom, okay, at the bottom left, right-hand side. Please, can someone tell me where it is? Actually, I can't see it myself.
I can't see it either.
Yeah. So if everyone can see, because the host doesn't have it. Yeah, so please do that.
We have to raise our hands physically and hope that the...
No, don't do that. I mean, that way, because sometimes when the people are a bit more, the screen, I cannot see everyone at the same time. So just do that electronic hand and I will definitely get to you. So, okay, so let's start. Raj, sir, please go ahead.
Okay, well, this is Raj Iyer welcoming all of you to the third Zoom session, the third of the Lunchbox Philosophers. In the first two, we covered theories of happiness and also philosophy and the coronavirus part 1 last week. And today we're going to tackle the second part of that exciting discussion. Of course, the coronavirus has become almost obsessional in people's consciousness. And one of the things that we addressed last week was the pandemic of fear surrounding this topic. You know, we are misguided by fake news on the University of WhatsApp. We're also misguided by fake news on Channel 9 or highly exaggerated tidbits that exaggerate the death statistics and give us virtually no hope. We don't realize that while this is a serious issue, it is not in most cases a life-threatening illness. In some ways, we've gone overboard in our desperation to contain and stamp out the coronavirus. Now, a quick disclaimer. I'm not suggesting, Donald Trump style, that we throw away our masks. I'm not suggesting that we ignore the protocols of physical distancing when with someone else in a physical space. Not at all. I think we need to observe those protocols and observe caution and cautionary measures in order to prevent succumbing to this virus. But on the other hand, we can also exaggerate its potency. We can also exaggerate it. We pointed out, for example, that the death statistics for diseases like TB and the bubonic plague were and are much, much higher than for COVID-19. So the pandemic of fear is unnecessary. We need to take very sober, calm, reflective, research-based steps on tackling a virus and tackling the social fallout and the economic fallout from that virus. I think that's what we really need to address. Last week, we also talked about the contemporary Italian philosopher Giorgio Agamben. Agamben is in the Michel Foucault camp. Foucault, as some of us know, really talked about biopower and how states as well as cultures tended to create discourses of power that actually create certain sorts of realities. Agamben is very interested in how this pandemic was created or constructed as an example of biopower. And he worries, even as I do, about the suspension of constitutional rights, the suspension of democracy, using the panic generated by this virus. We've already seen it in many states where with forced lockdowns and all of that, there are pretty much no civil rights for the vast majority of the population. Viktor Orban actually declared a state of emergency in Hungary. So there is that danger. There's also the danger that Agamben is very concerned about, and that is that once we have given away our civil rights, there may be no going back. Now, it's like the situation after 9/11. We said there are going to be all these temporary, airport restrictions. You're going to have to be strip searched. People are going to be randomly pulled out of lines. But that never went away, did it? There's a multi-trillion-dollar airport security industry, surveillance industry that's in place. Not that they've caught too many terrorists, but they are a powerful harassment tool for innocent passengers who put up with it meekly because of the fear of the terrorist in the bushes. Likewise here, once the pandemic is over, I think many of these repressive and suppressive protocols are going to stay in place. I don't see them going away in a hurry. They may be diluted a little here and there. We might not have to wear masks everywhere. But I think the basic masking and sanitizing and, requiring vaccination certificates before you board a plane or a train, all that is going to be in place now for a long, long time to come. And that is really disheartening. Now, Agamben's piece is part of a whole forum on the philosophy of the coronavirus, which was started very thoughtfully by the European Journal of Psychoanalysis. They've been publishing articles, reprints as well as original articles, and blog posts from philosophers like Jean-Luc Nancy and Giorgio Agamben, all the way from March through May, June 2020. So it's very current, very topical, and I would strongly suggest that you go online and look for them. We have some of the links posted on the Friends Who Like the Lunchbox Philosophers page. I suggest you take a look at that. So we talked about all of that. We also ended by discussing the poetics of space. This is a term that goes back to Gaston, Bachelard, the wonderful freewheeling French phenomenologist who tried to fuse poetry and phenomenology. And the Poetics of Space is just a beautiful book. Philosophers are not known for writing beautiful books. They're known for writing ponderous tomes. Look at Immanuel Kant, for example. But this is a beautiful book. And one of the things I want to draw your attention to is what he calls the dialectics of inside-outside. Now look at what happens during a lockdown. I don't know how you feel, and I want to throw this open for discussion here. We are moving into slightly new territory. That during a lockdown, we are confined inside, as most of us know, to our chagrin, and many of us go into deep depressions. The psychiatric costs of extended monster lockdowns of the kind we've had in India, in parts of the US, and in Hungary, and various other places, are not really very good. And of course, they're terrible for the economy. They throw the entire unorganized sector out of gear. Migrant laborers are in a tizzy. It created a whole migrant labor movement, walking back 700 to 1,000 kilometers or more back to their villages in India. It was just a mess. But aside from that, there is also, apart from the depression, apart from the economic costs, there's also that sense of claustrophobia. Of being trapped indoors. I've got to see the outside. This is what leads a lot of people to jump quarantine. I'm not justifying that behavior, by the way, but I am saying that there is a great psychological toll that's taken with the state of mass self-quarantine. Because what you have there is, in fact, the sense of intense, I want to get out. And at the same time, there's a terror of the marketplace. As the world is unlocking and getting out of the state of lockdown, we're also terrified about going to that cafe. We are terrified about friends who might be unmasked and who get highly offended if we tell them to put their masks on. So we are caught between agoraphobia, fear of the marketplace, and claustrophobia, fear of the indoors. fear and hatred, fear and loathing of the indoors and the outdoors. And that's a very jumpy, almost psychotic space to be in. It really is. And I think many of us at this stage need serious mental health counseling because we are both agoraphobic and claustrophobic, and you're not supposed to be both at the same time. Any thoughts in this matter? I mean, do you feel that way with the lockdown?
So I don't see any hands raised yet. So let me just begin. I have a thought. So, can I say that thought? Okay.
Yeah.
So I, when talking about the inside-outside dialectic and its psychological impacts, what I think about is in my normal life when I'm having a very hard day and I'm working and I'm somewhere outside, most probably in my college premises. I miss home. Home has a meaning to me because I am separated from it. Even when I went to Hyderabad, my memories of home, my perception of home was so great that I would cry in the bathroom. So that was the fact. And now I've been in my home for 5 months straight. I've never been at home quarantining for this long, and I can literally say that I hate my home.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a 180 degrees. So it made me think, why did I like my home? And then another question popped was that I actually, before, when I just joined IIIT Delhi, I actually shifted, my house shifted. I shifted from one place to another. And I realized staying here now, how much I miss my older home that I'd never thought about before, because I was, in and out college and home. It made me realize that home is still, for me, home is that older home. So, I mean, I don't even know how physical this inside outside is. To me, it's all psychological, really. All my dreams are from my older home, my childhood home. It's like, and so when I'm away from it, I really miss it. But when I'm there, I don't miss it. But I will say one thing. There's a person by the name of Serena Williams. She's an amazing tennis champion. And she was asked in an interview, do you miss tennis right now? And she said this very curious thing, and I don't know how to explain it, but she said, I don't miss it at all. But when I'm there on the court, I miss it. I miss it then. And that was kind of counterintuitive to me, very counterintuitive, and was interesting to me. I'd be happy to hear others' thoughts. All right. That was what I had to say. Anyone else?
Thank you. Anyone else?
Tarun?
Professor Sanghi? Professor Vishweshwaran? It's not like you to be tongue-tied.
Yeah.
Tarun, go ahead.
Yeah.
He raised his
hand. I was about to put my hand up. Okay. Anyway, I'll take off from where Ujjwal left. The problem with many of us is we don't understand what our comfort zone is. Mm-hmm. The comfort zone is perceived only when you are there. Otherwise, you're always looking for a comfort zone. That happens when you don't look for what do I learn from where I am, right? To me, it's totally non-philosophical. Not looking for finding out what I need to know. Not looking for what I need to learn. Once you look at what I need to learn, your home is where you are physically. Mm-hmm. Because if you have the comfort of learning, you don't look for an alternative, right? And when you go to a place where you comfortably learn, that's one of the places where you spend most of your time growing out, right? Then you go there, you miss that place, right? Yeah. But where you are, if you have the comfort of learning, you don't miss another place. Only thing you miss is an opportunity to learn, right? That's what you look for. When Raj talks about fear of inside and fear of outside, right? It comes from fear of lack of comfort to learn. Why is the pandemic driving me mad? because I'm looking at what I don't know. And there are people around who are scaring me to learn what the truth is. I've come to a point where I'm scared of learning the truth. If the truth disturbs my peace, I don't want to learn about it. Right? That's where I'm stuck. That's where the dichotomy comes. Right? If I'm ready to learn, if I'm ready to put my feet forward to learn what it is, the dichotomy doesn't exist. That is,
if for example, in the Count of Monte Cristo, which was one of my favorite childhood novels, Dumas, you know, there is a sense in which the central protagonist learns a lot while he's in prison. He learns so much that he's able to come out of there and rebuild himself, reinvent himself, and defeat his enemies, the ones who threw him into prison unjustly. But
his experience with Abbé.
Yes, but the Abbé, of course, is the wise old man, the Jungian archetype of the wise old man, who actually leads him, who initiates him, who mentors him, and of course he learns. So then prison becomes a learning space. Now, a lot of people could use that as a rationalization of the lockdown by saying, well, you know, you don't have to feel trapped. There are all these discovery seminars and webinars that you can attend, and wonderful YouTube videos that you could watch, and other stuff that you can download. And, you know, you could do, you know, astral travel, you could learn meditation, you could do this, you could do that. You could do everything except actually scuba dive. But you can learn all these things, you can acquire skills, you can acquire degrees, you could finish your, you know, triple degrees while you're locked down for years. But I don't know. I think that's a rationalization of jail. To my mind, there's something about my rebellious freedom craving spirit that resents that intensely, because I think that is the ideology that's being put forward by the peddlers of biopower, that governments as well as media and the corporates who are benefiting from this calamity want us to stay home and think that there's great advantage in not being out there in the polluted world, to just sit there and learn various skills, to improve ourselves, to work from home, you know, to lounge around in our pajamas watching, you know, the next boring Netflix movie. So they actually build a case for there being tremendous merit in all this. And it rationalizes incarceration. It rationalizes being locked up. And I say, no, damn it, you're still locked up. The fact that Edmond Dantès was able to learn a great deal in prison in the Count of Monte Cristo, and the fact that I'm able to learn a great deal while I'm locked down, you know, attending this webinar or that, doesn't mean a damn thing. I was still in prison. Sudhanshu, what do you think?
Just 1 minute.
Okay.
Sydney Carton, Tale of Two Cities. Right? He learned a lot more in his last stretch than the rest of his life. Right?
Well, that's because of his love of Lucy and all of that. You know, I mean, he really felt that he was doing something very noble and sacrificing his life. But that's very different. That's a romantic fantasy.
Soliloquy as to why he liked it, why what he does was meaningful, is what is very meaningful in what he wrote.
Yeah.
What Dickens wrote. Because the beauty was his thinking.
Yeah.
Right? The way where you are, learn more. Be about yourself, about your surroundings, about what is pushing you into this is what gives you this comfort of home.
Right.
It may be open, it may be green, like Wordsworth would like to put it.
Yeah.
Right? Or inside home.
Yeah. We need to move on at this stage to topics for this week. We've just been briefly covering and embellishing some of what we covered last week.
Just before,
but does anyone have a hand raised for a quick question?
Before I turn it over to Tarun Suresh, he has his hand up. I just have one brief comment. So with maybe it's not about space at all. Maybe it's about choice, because whenever I used to have a hostel room, for example, and I knew that, I could go home as well because I live in Delhi and I also have a hostel room, then I would stay in the hostel room and still be free spirited. I had no issues. But whenever I would not get a hostel room and I only had to come to home, so I didn't have really the choice. I always had to travel back to home. I was always frustrated. But the weird thing is, even when I had the hostel room, I was still going back to home regardless, because, it was related to comfort, yes. But in that, I saw this dichotomy as well, because Inside-Outside was playing a part, but it really wasn't about space at all. It was about just my sort of preference and sort of, it's very interesting to think about. Let's all. So I'll turn it over to Tarun Suresh. He raised his hand. Go ahead, Tarun.
Yeah, so I relate to it very much because just last week I quit my job, and this is the statement I have been telling everyone, saying this is the same setup I'm going to continue from education. So this is the same login. I'm just going to switch the browser, and there is no other change for my transition from the industry to the education. And as Dr. Raj rightly put, I never saw it in this perspective where it was agoraphobic and claustrophobic. Because there is a movie by Radhika Apte, Phobia, where she has a phobia of, stepping out of her house. And in the climax, she figures out that there is a much more welcoming community outside her house, kind of. So I could relate to it. So that's the kind of movie we are currently living right now. So this kind of, comparison is what has been bugging inside my head. And today I feel like it's got an explanation, like a clarification. This is what I've been feeling, but I have not been able to put in words. So I think, yeah. And also about the relaxations, which we are talking about, I think all the experts have been sort of, not given enough importance. And that's what it took the government, 4 to 5 months to realize that this is the new normal. And this is how we have to behave instead of quarantining each and every individual to their houses. So I think this is just a delaying perspective. So as you rightly said, I think this is the new normal. So we should just go about our lives instead of, prisoning ourselves. Yeah. So I just agree.
Unlike Radhika Apte's film, there is no welcoming community out there. So my agoraphobia in terms of fearing going out is quite, because the people who are out there are also very scared. They're as scared of me as I am of them, because each one is a potential time bomb, ticking away with all manner of corona infection. So I'm scared of them. They're scared of me. So there's this radical, hate match going on between self and other, where the self sees the other as contaminated or potentially contaminated and dangerous to my life. And the other sees me in like fashion. So this is certainly not a fertile ground for love or for relationships of any kind outside of virtual relationships, virtual sex, virtual this, virtual that, but certainly real physical relationships and real space-time, impossible. Even a one-night stand is impossible. A one-night stand especially impossible. I do want to say one thing, though, that Agamben refers to in one of his European Journal of Psychoanalysis pieces, and that is that we often distinguish between people inside, in our insider circle, parents, children, lovers, etc., close friends, someone we've known since two. They're safe. I can take off my mask and be with them and even do the arey yaar stuff with them. But is that really true? Is that really true? How safe are your family members? We think it's the Amazon or Zomato delivery boy who is unsafe, quote unquote. But are we really so sure? Our parents go out, our children go out, our siblings go out, our lovers go out, and God knows what they've caught. As I take off my mask with blithe disregard, figuring they're safe. And Agamben points out that in the paranoia of today, there is no such thing as a safe zone. So really one has to be masked almost 24 hours a day. except for the necessity of eating and taking a sip of water now and again. Then, you can't, and if you cut a hole through your mask and put the food in that way, the virus can also take advantage of this helpful opening and zoom right in. So, so there is no safety anywhere. That, of course, creates a very uncomfortable, dislodged feeling, what Freud referred to, and he's not the only one by any means, unheimlich, the German word meaning uncanny. There have been all kinds of studies, phenomenology of the uncanny, and this is certainly uncanny. The idea that any human interaction is potentially fraught with risk and suspicion. And it damages the I-thou, it damages real relationships, it reduces us to sterile bots facing a digital screen 24/7. And to my mind, there's something very, very crippling and impoverishing about that. So, I think about that. I mean, of course, it's fine to invent consolations. It's fine to say, hey, I'm not going to let this get me down. I'm really going to take advantage of this to earn a new degree. Or as Tarun just told us, okay, well, I quit my job or lost my job. That's fine. I'm getting an education. I'm doing that. So I'm doing something useful with my life. So I'm spending these pandemic years, these years of disease and fever as, learning opportunities, learning new skills, earning new degrees, all of that. I'd like to move on very quickly to other
sir,
stuff.
Before you do that, is it okay if I introduce a concept here that maybe we can also talk about?
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
So if no one has anything to say, I will bolt forward. Okay, so I think one thing that must be addressed amongst all of this is this concept of metaphorical truth. And I think it's very relevant here. It is the very question of truth. What is the truth? And then the tension between that metaphorical truth and rationality. Because on the one hand, it's very rational to have, be worried enough so that you don't get into danger. But at the same time, you can't be worried so much that you can't function. So you have to strike that balance. And what metaphorical truth is, metaphorical truths are, for example, if you're stranded on a boat somewhere out there. So if you then start to believe, just for the sake of surviving, that there is a God, and he will save me, those thoughts as placebos will help you. I may have talked about this before. I think maybe in the first talk I did talk about it. That placebo, that will help you. So in this case, also it can help you, I think. But we've talked about it before. If anyone wants to say anything.
Anyone?
It goes a little against scientific thinking also. But it's a good tension. It's actually, scientists won't reject it. I don't think so, because it's a very human thing. But it's a legitimate tension that we all wrestle with. And it's also the tension between philosophy and science, I think. Philosophy has a more accepting view towards concepts of metaphorical truth and consolation, as Sir said, or of creating one's own reality for the sake of survival, in against a more objective sort of a truth, which, morality also deals with that, but there are avenues within philosophy or morality that tackle all those differently. Anyone? Okay, Dr. Gargi Jain has something to say. Please go ahead.
This is just to add to that notion of learning opportunities. It is we select few, the privileged one, who can make this opportunity of a pandemic as a learning opportunity. But where people have to find food first, these things become irrelevant. All family members are in a house, in a small room. They can't earn their daily wages. So we can't have a one-sided view and think only from our perspective. We have to think of the common man as well as the marginalized, because they are the ones we are seeing who are actually suffering. They first suffered during the demonetization, now through the lockdown, and they are still suffering. Giving ration is not enough for them. There are other expenses which they need to meet, and we just can't say that this gives us an opportunity which can be used well. I've used it well. I don't know how many courses I have done during this period, but for them, making ends meet from day to day is a very tough time. There are relatives who have lost their jobs, and giving school fee is problematic for them. So how would it become an opportunity?
Yeah, no, Gargi, I quite agree with you about the marginalized, but at the same time, I think Ujjwal had a very good point in that and I'm not sure, Ujjwal, that all scientists would reject this. It may be a metaphorical truth, but there is a new discipline of a sub-discipline within medicine that's gaining ground in some circles, even in Ivy League schools in the US. And that is this sub-discipline known as psychoneuroimmunology, the effect of the psyche on the immune system. So the placebo effect can work. If I have a very strong, and Dr. Bernie Siegel and other MDs have actually talked about and written about this, that if I have a very strong belief that this sugar pill, which I don't know is a sugar pill, is going to cure my cancer or heal the COVID-19 or whatever else, it could very well have a positive impact, at least in terms of averting death, in terms of hastening and accelerating the speed of recovery. And so in this situation, I think if one dwells on the feeling of imprisonment, as opposed to, let's say, like Edmond Dante saying, under the influence of this wise abbé, I'm going to learn all this wonderful stuff. I'm going to learn astronomy. I was just an ignorant sailor. Now I know astronomy. I'm learning philosophy. I'm learning literature. I'm learning computer science. That's a little too brave for me, but but you get the point. So yes, that could work. That could certainly work as a placebo. And Gargi, even the laborer who, the migrant laborer who walks 1,000 kilometers back home, that toughness, that grit comes from something like the placebo effect of saying, I can do this. There is an alternative for me. I don't have to take my life. I don't have to hang from that ceiling fan. I can walk back home. I have the physical stamina, impossible as it might be. No food, no money in my pocket, no water even, and yet I am going to do it. And they do
that
it.
Grit, etc. is fine. But and I was not countering the placebo effect. I was just wanting to add to that a learning opportunity, but this learning opportunity where they don't know what they are going to do, especially till December. That uncertainty is lurking with many, and they don't have that time now to make it an opportunity.
But that's true. But at the same time, if one focuses on the hopelessness of that scenario, one sinks further and further into anxiety and depression. Whereas if one says, hey, there is a life out there and I'm going to seek it, even within the confines of my little room, I'm going to make something of this. Then I think one starts looking at the state of incarceration very differently. This is not to deny biopolitics. It's not to deny the grimness of the situation. It's not to deny the fact that, a whole year has been wasted for many people. It's not to deny that irreparable psychological and economic damage has been done to many. All of that is true. And yet I don't have to harp on that in order to, so that if I don't harp on it, the placebo effect can kick in and I can lead a slightly happier life during this lockdown or during this gradual unlock.
If I may,
and during this progression towards herd immunity that Tarun was talking about, that we realize, hey, we have to live with it. We can't keep locking up people indefinitely. If you get it, you get it. And the more people get it, the more we are progressing toward herd immunity. Why is it that many American tourists fall sick the minute they come to India, even if they drink bottled water and because their immune systems are rather delicate and weak, whereas we have very strong immune systems thanks to our exposure to all kinds of viruses and bacteria. In fact, I'd say India as a whole is reacting very strangely with the corona crisis because we have been so tough. With cholera, with TB, with the bubonic plague, with dengue, you name it. There's no disease that has not visited our shores, and yet we remain quite cheerful about it. And this is the first time we have, I see this panicked reach for the sanitizer bottle, the mask, and so forth.
If I may respectfully intervene, Miss Anita has had a hand raised for a while, and then Sudhanshu after that. So please go ahead, Miss Anita, and then Sudhanshu. Yes, so that everyone has a chance to speak. Yeah, please.
Absolutely.
No,
Anita.
I was just thinking of this placebo effect. Now, I came here and sat myself in Idiki after years of work and lots of trials and tribulations, travels, home, family, because I found every time I tried to do some meditation or yoga seriously, the family pulled you out or you had some emergency, so you were rushing off. Now, I just was thinking, is it a placebo thing, and isn't it sometimes a choice that you want to just sit and quarantine yourself? And I think for me, this thing has been an eye-opener because nobody troubles me anymore. I can make a choice whether I want to get people or I don't want to get people, or I want to sit by myself and meditate. Because if I tried earlier, nobody allowed me to do that. They'd say, you can't be sitting in the hills and locking yourself up. So I really think this is very interesting because this whole inside-outside, you can go within. And I find it very, very refreshing, I would say, because I chose to come here and got quarantined much before the virus came in, and I find it continued. So I think that is another part which very few people are looking at. Maybe we need to sit and just give it a thought, like the philosophers say. We need to go within sometimes, and this gave me an opportunity. So I'm just stating from my perspective. I didn't learn anything, and I'm more than delighted now to come on, do the Zooming and things which I was terrified of. I'm seeing Raj, who I just read and enjoyed reading and bought books saying, okay, let me see this. And I bought Nietzsche and, the ones which I worked with, but on a new perspective. So I've been learning and reflecting. And I think the problem I find is the choice to step out, to go. As you said, the fear is what bothers me. That we are all the time terrified. So I'm only concerned about that, whether I should wear a mask, whether I have had COVID or I have not had COVID. Am I alive or am I dead? Because after 60, it becomes a problem. So that's my only fear right now, whether,
Well, but perhaps you're telling yourself that too often. After 60, it becomes a problem. Till it sinks in and sinks in and sinks in, it becomes your reality. I mean, there are many people who are much older. Look at Amitabh Bachchan or the Chief Minister of Karnataka, for example, who are much older. And they seem to be doing quite well. Which, I mean, I'm very glad that all these celebrities and politicians are recovering so fast from the coronavirus and, actually running whole campaigns and running states from their wards, because it's a message to the people that it's not that scary, really. Yeah, there are people who die, but there are people who die of the common cold. If you have a compromised immune system, if you have HIV disease, and someone walks into your room with a common cold, you could die. Common cold can be lethal.
You could get pneumonia, even without
very quickly.
COVID, and die at whatever age.
So if you have a compromised immune system or you have comorbidities, the fashionable word of the day, yes, you could die. But that's not confined to the coronavirus. There are many other diseases, including, as I said, the common cold and the ordinary flu, not the Spanish flu, which can do that to you. But Sudhanshu, you had a question or a comment. Please,
Sudhanshu, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think we have moved past that point, but I just wanted to add to Gargi ma'am that the lockdown, the concept of lockdown is sort of very classist. As like I personally, in the initial phases of the lockdown, I saw my friends really enjoying that we have an extended holiday, but then we saw that the laborers were kicked out of their main cities, and they had to go 300 or 400 kilometers walking way to their villages and all. And then we have the concept of educating, like learning during the pandemic, but then they have to make their ends meet, and then people in the Jammu and Kashmir don't even have like 4G facilities, and they were made to give exams of the maybe DU, and then even in our college we had the assignments and all happening. So
that's a very good point. Before I turn it over to Raj sir to move with the topic, I think he made a very good point and also connected with what Miss Anita said, and I want to bring this up. We're talking about space here, we're talking about isolation, but no one has addressed so far that the pressures of the lives that we lead as a student, all my deadlines are still intact. So even though I am at my home, it's so with Miss Anita, for example, she's there by choice. So she has chosen a different kind of life. So that life comes with her, right? And all the choices with her. She can feel in control of that because she has taken that decision. But with me, even if I might be in isolation, the fact is that I have to do all the assignments. I have to, do all those things. The pressure is still the same. And so we need to talk about that as well. But with that, moving forward, Rajayar sir, could you please take us forward in the discussion?
No, I do want to address briefly what Sudhanshu said, and that is, and we discussed this, Sudhanshu, last week. I wish you could have joined us. We talked about the classism of the lockdown. We said that it's not just a question of to lock down or not to lock down. It is very classist because only the rich and the middle class can afford an extended lockdown. And all those trolls who go, let's go back to a lockdown because the virus is going to get us, are obviously very well heeled. They have independent means or they have money coming in from their IT jobs. They're not worried. They can afford to take it easy for another 2 years. Just as the top echelons of the bourgeoisie, the Tatas, the Ambanis and all of that, they're not worried. They can carry on for another 5 years without any substantial profits because they've already raked in the bucks. Of course, we'd all like to rake in more, but it takes that kind of comfort level to say, let's do some more locking down. But there are the poor. If you're living in the Dharavi slums, the lockdown makes no sense. Social distancing makes no sense. If 40 people are in a room, it might be healthier not to stay in that room. It might be healthier being out in the open, being out in the marketplace. There might be less risk there than in my room. Also, so social distancing makes no sense. The lockdown makes no sense if I am on a subsistence wage or unemployed or with no money at all. This is really a game of the rich. And that's part of biopolitics, in the sense in which Foucault and Agamben talk about it, that this is really a ploy to marginalize a certain section of society even further. Let's dig them into even greater poverty while we watch more Netflix films. It's like Nero playing the fiddle while Rome burned. So, and I'm very glad that many countries are waking up to this and are taking their chances with herd immunity. That's what's happening, which is why you see this spike in cases after these lockdowns have been lifted. The answer is not going back to the lockdown, which again is going to deprive the poorest of the poor and the lower middle class of any kind of means of subsistence. But let's move on. Agamben has a very interesting concept, the idea of bare life. And he says one of the things that disappoints him about this pandemic, in one of his blog posts in the European Journal of Psychoanalysis, he says one of the things that disappoints him is that people are terrified. There's this pandemic of fear because they are hanging on to bare life, to Zoe. The Greek word Zoe, bare existence. We are crawling, clinging. I want to live. I'm terrified. I'm terrified that that virus is around the corner. He says we're not really concerned about living the fullest sense, to be alive, physically, emotionally, sexually, intellectually, spiritually. Bios is the Greek word for that flourishing, that eudaimonic flourishing of all one's capacities. Instead, we're in a state of Zoe, we're in a state of bare life. And of course, the sovereign states are interested in keeping, and a pandemic is a perfect excuse for keeping 90% of the population in a state of bare life. A wonderful tool of control. Because you're clinging to bare life. You're not interested in, okay, I'm not going to take needless risks. I'm going to go out there unmasked, but that doesn't mean I'm going to hide under the blankets. I am going to take risks. I'm still going to live because as far as I know, this is the only life I have to live. And exercise one's full potential. That's a disappointment. And then, of course, Jean-Luc Nancy, who's one of the most outstanding philosophers of the first half of the 21st century. Nancy and Agamben got into it because Nancy does not believes that Agamben is treating the virus too lightly. Nancy believes that this is a serious disease and we don't have a vaccine for it. And he's irritated by Agamben calling it just another flu. He says, we have a vaccine for the flu. We don't have any for this right now. But I think he's missing the point. Nancy is at that level because Agamben is not saying it is only the flu. Initially, he dismissed the idea of it being a pandemic, but later he speaks ironically of reflections on the plague, which means he has accepted about a month or two into this that there is a pandemic, that there is a new plague. But he's still very concerned about how it feeds into biopower, how it feeds into this clinging to bare life. Do you really feel, does anyone have any thoughts about this, that we are really, behind our fear is just this obsession with bare life? I'm clinging just like an insect. I want that last gasp. I don't really want to live. I don't want to express my potentials. And you can live even in a concentration camp. Viktor Frankl did that in Man's Search for Meaning. He shows how even if life is shrunk to its bare minimum, you can certainly find meaning in a ray of sunshine on the windowsill and write a poem about it, perhaps. But most of us are not interested in living or flourishing. We just want to survive. We just want that bare life. What do you think, Ram?
So before that, Dr. Gargi just raised her hand.
Dr.
Ram, if you
Gargi
can go
just raised her hand. Okay.
Yeah.
This was in response to what you were asking, Jaya, that yes, most people just want to live that bare life. They are only concerned with safety. And in fact, they are making the fear more powerful by talking about it, by giving all those informations which will create a negativity in a person and increase their fear. And we can't live a bare life because otherwise we will not have something to look on to. Whereas life means every day we have something to look up to. There is something we want to do, something we want to achieve. So this is just because some are very, they have a cushioned life, fine, but they are not going to step out because they have that fear that if they go out, they are going to die. But dying can be in any form. It's not only the COVID. One steps out of the house and one, God forbid, meets an accident. And whereas the plane falls and the pilot ejects safely. So we can't say on that. So I don't think
that drunk on a motorcycle runs you over, that truck runs you over,
Yeah, so I mean, but I agree that many people are more living this bare life.
Yes, and that's a very, very important concept, I think, that Agamben brings in. But moving on from there, I'd like to talk briefly about what Nancy has to say about the communovirus versus the coronavirus. Where we talk about the coronavirus, but corona in Latin means the crown. Such an imperial word, the coronavirus. We are its slaves, okay? Why not regard it, reframe it as the communovirus, as something that affects all of us? And therefore, instead of inducing the self-other hostility, Nausi's suggestion is that we view it as a communovirus. And of course, he learned that term from my friend Shaj Mohan and Divya Dwivedi of IIT Delhi. The idea of the communovirus is the virus that calls forth the cooperation between nations, cooperation between peoples, individuals within a neighborhood or a community acting together to fight this virus, not scapegoating each other or viewing each other with hostile, paranoid suspicion, but rather coming together to deal with this virus. What do you think of that? Do you think that, I mean, the virus seems to have accelerated tensions. China, for instance, is the obvious scapegoat. Instead of wondering about how this coronavirus is linked to other viruses of the same family, like the original SARS virus, instead of doing responsible and authentic medical research, we're much more concerned about scapegoating Wuhan and scapegoating China. And China has emerged as the bad boy in so many narratives recently, and of course their actions have not exactly improved their credibility. Look at what they're doing in Hong Kong, for example. But the point here is we don't seem to be coming any closer to the idea of the virus being a context for creating community. Far from it. And in India and elsewhere, we're also terrified of people who have it. So we treat them like lepers. We don't want to bury them or cremate them. We delay their death certificates. Family doesn't want to have anything to do with that cremation or that burial. So oftentimes your only mourners are maybe some staff at the hospital with a good heart who decide to follow you to the grave. There's also the fact that you are shunned by your neighbors. The municipal corporation of Bangalore, BBFP, actually put up tin sheets outside the front doors of people who had the coronavirus. I mean, talk about a medieval practice of isolating and targeting those. And then, of course, neighbors started pelting bricks through the windows and all of that. That's not how you deal with a sick person. But instead of evoking cooperation, instead of evoking community, it really does seem to have evoked, apart from biopolitics, the worst possible shadow instincts at play in the human animal. What do you think?
Ram, go ahead.
Still the communovirus, Ram?
I have 2 points to say. One is that I feel that we always, the general discussion about the coronavirus in social media or, when you just talk to another person, it seems to be either of these two ways. One is the positive outlook that, this is there, let's just go ahead and deal with our life. There's a way of looking at it. And, life is more than this. And that's one way of looking at it. The other way tends to be fear-driven and a kind of nihilistic, way of looking at it. I would personally love to, view it as, because I believe that life is indifferent to anything and everything, and it just throws things at you, be it the coronavirus, be it exams, simple things like exams. And family problems, anything. That's how it. And you have your share of successes and happiness as well. And I just see this as an extension of the coronavirus, as an extension of it. Be it the coronavirus, or this is a kind of crisis that has been. It's like a celebrity, a problem that's become a celebrity. There are other problems which are not become celebrities, but still there are problems for each one of us. Where some of us might be, having some kind of financial debt, and some people, for 5 years they'll be struggling with this. And then a kind of vaccine comes in, and somebody gives you that loan that you, desperately want, or same thing with exams, entrance exams, or something. So that's the first point I wanted to make. The second point is that we always tend to discriminate throughout history. Even Plato has, Socrates in his this one has discriminated basis on gold. Basis on something I don't remember. But he is
gold, silver, and lead.
Yeah.
Yes, there certainly is an analogy to the caste system in Plato's Republic.
Yeah. And even the Portuguese, there has been a history of discrimination there as well. And anyway, so there has always been a history of discrimination in one way or the other. They can, be it economic class-wise, be it intellectual-wise, be it religious-wise, country, racial, everything. It's always you tend to discriminate, and I mean, well, that's how we are to actually look at everyone as an equal. I mean, we desperately try to, because we feel really guilty that we tend to discriminate each other, and that's not the right way to do it. But somewhere down the line, deep inside us, we always have the tendency to discriminate. And when you have politics that's been played at a global level, especially after the World War, there it's just I just see this as this discrimination as just an blown out way of seeing it. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. But at the same time, don't you? I mean, I agree with you that discrimination has gone on for years and years, Ram. But don't you think it's reached a kind of a screaming frenzy now in the time of the coronavirus? The things were
I just see this
Mohan, they were at a I wouldn't say equilibrium, but they were.
It's like an election.
It's like an
election. It's like an election.
Come on, that's an interesting comparison.
Maybe you're trying to say
versus Democrat.
Maybe you're trying to say it's politicized. I think that's what you're trying to say, aren't you? Or no?
No, not just politicized. It can be. I mean, anything, any concept, any theoretical concept that has come into a kind of practice has the ability or the potential to be politicized. That's,
or maybe polarized.
Right. Yeah. Polarized would be a better. Yeah. Polarized would be a better word.
Okay. So Sudhanshu, please go ahead. He has his hand raised. Does anyone have their hands raised? Just to be sure. No. Okay. Great. Sudhanshu.
Yeah. So I just wanted to add to Raj, so that with the Communovirus thing in the early April, I mean the xenophobia towards China is there. Of course, we're calling it Chinese virus and all. But in the early April, in the Indian context, we saw the Tablighi Jamaat people were being communalized, and the sole sort of blame of the coronavirus was put on them, and it was all sort of politicized, of course, polarized, of course, yes, and they were all sort of political parties being involved and sort of benefiting of that concept. So I just wanted to add that.
Professor
Yes,
Vish,
that's true.
Please. Unmute yourself.
Vish, we can't hear you.
Yeah. See, I have something to say about the community virus. The major community virus is we do not know what is success. For us, success is what your neighbor appreciates and not what you feel satisfied about. Right? You're scared. If I get coronavirus infected, my neighbor will look down on me. He'll think I've not been careful.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about the coronavirus infection because it'll affect me in health. Because I say my neighbor will think I've not been careful. That is a major community virus that we suffer from. What will they say? My evaluation of success is not based on my satisfaction, but the smile on my neighbor's face when he sees me. Whether he understands or not is of no consequence. That is what the fear is. If I have the confidence that I've taken the right care, I have no reason to get a fear of infection. If it happens, it's an outside chance. Then I have no fear.
But no. But you see, Vish, what you're saying is based on the assumption that my neighbor is going to be rational and say, "Oh yes, poor Vish took all precautions, and I'm going to send him some soup." Poor guy.
I don't expect my neighbor to be rational at all, because I don't know what is rationality. I don't know what is rational. All I know as the neighbors pelt bricks through your windows, you're going to just smile cheerfully and stoically and say, "Well, that's just the way things are."
Come on,
what it is,
Rishi.
the fear.
There are people who say,
fear.
I actually talked to someone about their fear psychosis, as I called it. And I said, why don't you come out and join me for a cup of coffee in an open air cafe? We'll sit, regulation meters apart. We'll wear masks. And you know what her answer was? And I think it was a very good answer, actually. Her answer was, I'm not afraid of the disease. I'm not afraid of dying. I'm afraid of being shunned, reduced to a leper, left in a hospital corridor with no beds to put me in, dying of sheer neglect. That's what I'm afraid of, she said. I'm not afraid, repeat, of the coronavirus. What do you think of that?
It's not the virus. It's what my neighbor would say when it gets on TV.
It's not a question of what the neighbor would say. It's what the neighbor would do. And it's what hospitals would do or not do. It's not a fear of, this is not keeping up with the Joneses. It's not a fear of the neighbor's, good opinion of, no, I'm not afraid. This is a very different level of fear. It's a much higher octave of fear where I'm afraid for my life, not just because of the virus, but also because of social disapproval, opprobrium.
Social disapproval born out of a lack of understanding and lack of analysis. They don't
Correct, but you're the victim. We can analyze that in a webinar or a seminar, months later. But if I survive the attack, but the point here is you could be actually assaulted physically. And even if you're not assaulted physically, you could be ignored, derided. People could look away from you. You don't get the comfort that you really need when you're sick. You desperately wish someone would send you a bowl of chicken soup or tomato soup if you're a vegetarian. And nobody does. They don't care. They're actually very angry with you. And then hospitals, the personnel at hospitals are either overworked or scared, or they just don't want to have anything to do with the coronavirus. So unless you're a very influential politician, they don't want to give you a bed. There are people who've died of heart attacks because hospitals have refused to take them in for cardiac surgery till after the results of the corona test. If you test positive for the coronavirus, they will not give you a triple bypass. That, to my mind, is shocking. It is a dramatic abuse of human rights. Quite barbaric, in fact. But all that comes out of the fear psychosis. And everyone in this almost hysterical clinging to bare life. Don't you think?
See, that's what I call lack of judgment, but full of attitudinal judgmental. Right? They're extremely judgmental, but they're not judging anything. This is what community viruses.
They're not thinking critically. Yeah, that is true.
That's right.
Yeah.
Can we move forward, sir?
Yes, we need to move forward because we are.
Now, let's keep it the last topic. Yeah, let's keep whatever we discuss now to be the last thing we discuss.
Yeah,
do you want to discuss, or do you want me to take over about the virtues?
I would like you to talk about the virtue of the virus, which is a very intriguing and provocative topic, because so far I've been very down on the virus, and even more down on people who are scared of it. Unduly and abnormally scared of it. I think it is legitimate to have a certain fear of the virus, just as one can be legitimately scared of getting pneumonia.
So talking about the virtues of the virus, so the philosopher Rocco Ronchi writes a bit about it. Before I can tell you exactly what he says, he talks about what are events. Well, he says events are not facts, but he claims that there is no, unless there is any trauma, there is no event, which is to say that events are facts, not facts, but events happen only where there is trauma. An event is such because it generates real possibility. And possibility, he means to say, is the fact of doing something. That's it, the action of it. So he says, it follows that an event can only be thought of starting from the future it generates because it transforms, because it creates what is real and with it possibility. So he questions the idea as to really how coronavirus is really an event. Can we view it as an event right now? Can we say, oh, we learned this from coronavirus, virtues of coronavirus? Is that even a good question to ask? Because for that, we need to be in a future point, sort of looking back at it. That would be his argument. Regardless, he goes on, and then he talks about destiny. So he says, the virus invites us to meditate. He says this, I do not think, however, that the object of this meditation is the contingency of being and the precarious nature of human affairs. We certainly do not need COVID-19 to reflect on our fragility. This anxiety has never really disappeared. The virus rather articulates existence, ours and that of others, as destiny. Suddenly we feel we are being dragged by something that is overpowering, which grows in the silence of our organs, ignoring our will. Is freedom comprised to such an extent? This idea of freedom is certainly mediocre if it conflicts with the inevitability of what takes place. Among the virtues of the virus, we must also mention its ability to generate a more sober idea of freedom. The freedom achieved in doing something about what destiny does to us. To be free is to do what must be done in a specific situation. This is not a philosophical abstraction. We see it embodies in the efforts that people make, the earnestness and dedication with which thousands of people work daily to slow the spread of the infection. So this is his view on the virtues of the virus. That is, it is part of destiny, and it's honestly, it's a chance for us to test ourselves in a way. You know, it's to deal with the situation that we're handed. And just I think Ram mentioned this, the positive outlook, so to speak. But I would be curious to understand to hear if anyone has to say, do they think the coronavirus can be viewed objectively like that so far? Like, can we even say the coronavirus is teaching us all these things unless we are in a future point? That's one. And second is, do you think that it is the description of destiny, and to deal with destiny and to deal with it with meditation and to learn from it is the view that you would hold? Please.
Well, first of all, what does he mean by meditation?
Well,
clearly not meditation in terms of mindfulness meditation, let's say.
I don't think so. I think meditation he means or I guess he meant it in a rhetorical way. I mean, that wasn't his biggest point.
Well, I think he means deep reflection.
Exactly. Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Contemplation. Yeah.
But the point is to
but
grow.
Now, what do you mean by possibility? I mean, I was very excited by what he said about possibility.
Yeah.
So the virus generates possibility, does it? Can you explain that more clearly?
Yeah, he said that he would characterize anything as an event if there is trauma. That is, there was struggle. He says our life is made of events, and every event had a certain trauma. And he describes possibility also in terms of anything. So possibility is to do something, that's it. So unless there is an event, there is no opportunity, he says, to do something of the kind of doing that he's talking about. So he says the virus gives us the possibility here to test this idea of our freedom, which is to, in the face of destiny, you know, we deal with what we're dealt with, and to learn from it, you know, that is what he's saying. But that's the second question. The first question is it even right to ask this question right now, or should we wait, you know, 5 years from now and look back at it? So that's how it goes.
Now that is quite interesting, because in a way, what we are wrestling with and have been wrestling with this evening in our discussion is just that: freedom versus destiny. The destiny of the virus versus how I feel trapped, how I feel, and it's not just me, the little me, but us, we, one, feels trapped in various sorts of ways, perhaps between agoraphobia and claustrophobia, perhaps not. There is a sense of entrapment and loss of freedom. Biopower, bare life, all these are restrictive of freedom. So it's a destiny that restricts freedom. So it certainly provokes meditation. But I'm not sure that every event has a trauma attached to it. Suppose, Ujjwal, and I certainly hope this is going to be true for the both of us, that on the other side of the vaccine, I travel to Delhi and meet you and meet Tarun and meet Ram and Lata and XYZ, meet Dr. Jain and whoever is there, Professor Vish. There may not be a trauma attached to it at all. We sit down and have a cup of coffee together in a CCD. Where's the trauma there?
I totally get, that is exactly what I was thinking. But let me just say what Rocco says.
The man is certainly. My first thought when I heard that was, he's been on some very interesting stuff.
To be clear,
drugs that I haven't heard of.
Yeah, to be clear, this is what exactly Rocco says. So I'll be very clear as to what I think and what he says. He says this: there is no trauma he says that for this reason, an event is always traumatic. To the point, we may say that if there is no trauma, there is no event. That if there is no trauma, literally nothing has happened. So yes, so I would also probably disagree with that, but that's what he bases all his thesis on.
Yeah, because the event of our having coffee together at a CCD in Delhi or on campus at IIIT there's nothing traumatic about it.
Although,
unless one of us has a delayed attack of the coronavirus or something very different. Let's say you or Tarun clutch your belly in agony and it turns out to be an attack of appendicitis. One could say it's an event that turned out traumatic for some people and the rest of us empathize, and so we also share in the sense of trauma. But under ordinary circumstances, we drink our coffee and go home or go back to our rooms.
Yeah.
There's no trauma. Where's the trauma?
Although, so I think this is a very interesting, I think it is worth discussing. So just as happiness in our first discussion, the terminology was a little questionable there. So different people mean different things by happiness. I think maybe for the sake of argument, for what he is trying to say with respect to destiny, etc., let's assume that for him, the definition of an event is that trauma is attached, and therefore, then he follows his argument. I think that could be one way to deal with it. Because I'm sure there are events that are traumatic and non-traumatic, but he says that he connects trauma in a very integral way to an event, such that only if there is trauma that there is possibility, and possibility he describes as this ability to kind of rise to the occasion almost, or to do something about something. So
I don't see that at all. I think events of great significance can come out of having coffee together, including long-term friendships, long-term mentorship, long-term collaborations. Lots of things can happen. So to say that an event has no significance if it's not traumatic is baloney. An event can have great significance even if it's untraumatic. Suppose it's highly positive.
Yeah.
That act of having coffee together, we become collaborators on a paper.
Yeah. Can anyone,
I don't see anything traumatic about it.
Yeah, but I mean, what's the definition of trauma though? I mean, I just read his philosophy and I just took it.
Whatever the definition of trauma might be, you and I collaborate on a paper and it's successfully published, or even if it isn't.
Yeah.
That's a very positive event. You can't call that a trauma by whatever definition of trauma, unless you're, adopting a Humpty Dumpty and Alice view of trauma. I pay words to make them exactly what I want them to mean. So by trauma, I mean a very pleasant coffee drinking afternoon. Now, if you redefine the word trauma to such a radical extent, of course, you could say the event of drinking coffee together is traumatic.
Maybe let me just try to defend Rocco a little bit. Maybe what he's trying to say is, and this is my take, that in the future, when we remember things, the things that were traumatic are sort of have a better memory. We have a better memory of them, and they define us better. Maybe from that sense, he's talking about it. I don't know.
I don't remember throwing up when I had an attack of hepatitis at the age of 13. But I do remember all the non-traumatic nurturing and and
That's
the
good.
cards
That's
that
right.
got,
I know.
and special things that people did for me. So it's not true that memory is connected to trauma at all.
That was a bad
that's
point.
a highly biased, jaundiced, questionable definition of memory.
By the way, that was only my point. It wasn't Rocco's point.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, you were trying to rehab him
Yeah.
or defend him, but I think it's not easily defensible, at least the way it's, he's been presented.
Yeah.
There may be more to him than that.
Yeah, maybe I didn't cover it, and maybe I missed some portion. I don't know. I tried my best.
But before we leave, I realize it's getting late for some of us, but Ujjwal, what do you say to a discussion of the philosophy of technology next week? Starting a philosophy of technology. Or do you want to continue this discussion or something else?
I mean, I would love to have a discussion on philosophy of technology, but let me give all the people here some options. So I just want to know there, because I have no idea what people want. So I have an idea about the philosophy of anger, because I think it's very interesting. It's very interesting. Then I have an idea about philosophy of dialectics and dialogue itself. Meaning, for example, this dialogue that we're having. I mean, just do thumbs up or thumbs down, right? Just guys, do that. So philosophy of anger, thumbs up or thumbs down. Okay, philosophy of dialectics and dialogue, modes of dialogue. Okay, and then what other topics did I had more topics, certainly. Philosophy of space, again, separately, in its own way.
Well, I think that's
Okay. So it's
I'm at it with space.
Any other ideas? Give me ideas, guys. Just give me. I'm open to everything. Just anyone.
But let me just explain why I did a thumbs down for that one.
And
that's because
fine.
Philosophy of technology, thumbs up or thumbs down? Thumbs up, the thumbs up, guys. Oh, most people, yeah, philosophy of technology it is. Okay, great. Got it.
Let's do it. But then let me just explain why I don't like because space is a very touchy subject for me now, because I feel I have very little space thanks to the pandemic. That sense of confinement. So I don't want to revisit the idea of space and try.
It's got trauma.
I'd rather let it be. Okay, let me get a shot of that Oxford. Let me get a shot of that Oxford vaccine, take off my mask, and then let's talk about space.
Yeah, maybe it's got too much trauma for you, or for all of us.
Yeah, it is traumatic. It is an event in Rocco's sense.
Yes. So I just want, please, anyone give me more ideas. Maybe we won't do it next week, but we can take it later, and you can always give ideas of topics, what we can do, philosophy. By the way, one more topic. Yes, philosophy in psychology. So I have a professor in psychology. He's a neuroscientist. He would love to do this. I've not talked to him about what exactly he would talk about, but he's very smart, and I respect him very much. I'm sure he will be able to gin something up and kind of blow all of our minds. So that's one. Give me more ideas, guys. Do you have any preferences of your own, a topic that hasn't been talked about you would like us to?
How about philosophy of anger? I think it's wonderful because it's just beginning to get explored.
That's already,
in fact, Larson.
Yeah, we already mentioned that.
Then Larson and others have just started this whole conversation about philosophy of fear, philosophy of anger. Not that, I mean, I think if we go back to the Stoics, for example, they had a lot to say about anger. Many ancient philosophers had a great deal to say about anger.
Anger is on the list. So anger is on the list. So I'm just saying what was not on the list. Any more new ideas? If you think some topic that interests you that we haven't said yet.
How about a philosophy of horror? Not a philosophy of fear, but a philosophy of horror fiction, philosophy of horror. What is horror?
That's good. That's good. Yeah, that's
even horror in whodunits. Yeah, there are so many dimensions to horror.
Yeah, and
it's actually been done. There's actually a book out called The Philosophy of Horror that analyzes horror with reference to horror films and books. But it also talks more generally about horror as a concept.
Yeah, I had one idea. So just Sir, you also chime in. So I had this idea about, it's not exactly philosophy, but I wanted maybe Ananya Oberoi could come also in this. I wanted to discuss the topic of the the mind of poetry. I don't know how to explain it well. Or the
not the mind of poetry.
Not the mind.
Something else. But I know what you're talking about.
Something related to poetry. So, for example, if I'm a poet and I'm writing poetry, there's a way of thinking about poetry, thinking about poetry, right? And the way we consume poetry and all of those things. Is anyone interested in that? The magic of poetry, let's say. The magic of poetry.
Yeah. Well, we just got a note from Deepak Hariharan saying that he can send us an article by Stephen King on why we crave horror movies.
Great. Deepak, please send it wherever you can, Facebook group or DM me, anything. Yeah, so these are pretty good topics.
We could have a discussion of the philosophy of horror after the philosophy of technology, and then maybe get into dialectic, some of the other topics.
Anger and poetry and everything. So we have a good lineup.
Maybe horror films right after the philosophy of technology. Gargi, it breaks my heart that you're leaving, but
yeah, bye. Bye.
All good things must come to an end. Bye-bye.
Also, just before we leave, I just want to recommend a documentary to all of you guys. Please watch it. It's called Human. It was released in 2015. Please watch it. It's the best documentary in the world ever. It's called Human. That's it. I also posted on Facebook. It's pretty good.
For the benefit of those who are tuning in late, I think we should tell them that this will be available in recorded form.
Yeah.
We may even upload it, these videos on YouTube, but the video will certainly be available on the Friends Who Like the Lunchbox Philosophers page. They are the sponsors. That is the group that is sponsoring these events. And Ujjwal and I are the co-hosts of these sessions. So you can catch the recordings even if you've missed a discussion. It's not the end of the world. And for those who felt a little lost during this discussion because you missed part 1 of philosophy and the coronavirus, it's there. It's there in recorded form. So you haven't really missed anything except for the joy of participating. And that's why I'd like each and every one of you to participate, if at all you can, between 7 and 8 p.m. next Tuesday and for several Tuesdays after that.
Yeah. So there we have it.
Anything to add to that?
Anyone else? Anything? No? So there we have it. It was a great session. All right. Bye, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
That was great. Yeah. Terrific. Bye.
Terrific. Bye.
Adios.